Hello, Greg.
Hello, Justin. Thank you for teaching us a little about how to love.
Not me. That's just a song.
It's a song. Speaking of songs, if you were here at the beginning, I was outside greeting, but I could hear it. They were playing Hall & Oates. Your Kiss is on my list, yes, with all of its deep theological meanings.
We like to make people work for the meaning.
I think it's in there. But I think we'd kill it if we talked about it. So that was amazing. You know, that'd be a wonderful reprise, hint, hint, at the end of the service. But yeah, I know. You can't tell a musician what to do. Welcome, Jacob's Well. It is fantastic to see you all here today. I'm Greg Meyer, pastor at Jacob's Well. If you don't know me, my name is not Jacob Well, Jacob Samuel Well. It's Greg Meyer. And but it is great to be here with a couple hundred of my favorite people in all the world, and knowing there's a couple hundred of the rest of them not in here yet, but we'll work on that as time goes by. I want to dive right into just crashing to what we want to talk about. We're dealing with this subject, the good life, and you know, what is the good life really all about? And I'd like to start with a proposition that I think you probably have a hard time arguing with, and that is the quality of our lives depends heavily on the quality of the decisions we make. Now, how can you argue with that? Make bad decisions, you know, things don't go so well. And here's the deal, God has an app for that, you know, kind of picking up on our theme. And that app that God has is not, don't make mistakes, or don't do bad things. That isn't God's approach, although a lot of people sort of think it is. In fact, I think it's a popular notion that you kind of have this spectrum of life, you know, and there's fun on this end, and on the other end over here is God, you know? And that's what God's job is, to keep you from having the good life, you know, and you got to do the God thing instead, and what a bummer. Who's willing to trade all that up? And, you know, it isn't like that at all. That isn't how it works. God's app for your life, for your, you know, making quality decisions to have a quality life, is not the Ten Commandments. I'm all for the Ten Commandments, nothing against them, but that isn't how God wants to do it, all right? They're there for some good things, but the trouble is with the Ten Commandments is that they're telling you mostly what you're not supposed to do. They don't really tell you what to do. There's a couple of them that are worded positively, but not most of them. You know, and so would you agree with me that this is true? And this is actually, if you pull out your Sunday papers and look on the back side, you'll find an outline. And you got a pen that you got when you walked in too. You can fill this out if that's helpful to you. If you find that annoying, you can ignore it. If you find me annoying, you're stuck. And so that feeling there is the difficulty of making good decisions isn't so much not doing bad things, but it's choosing between all the good things we got there. I think that's really true. You know, I know pretty well the stuff I'm not supposed to do. I mean, I don't, you know, typically walk down the street and see an old lady and say, should I help her across the street or push her in front of a bus? You know, that's not the problem. My problem is, am I going to take time to help her or not? That's where I'm struggling with things like that. We live in this opportunity-rich society, and we're overwhelmed with good choices. And for a lot of us, our problem is, what ones aren't we going to do? Because we can't do them all. And they seem to conflict and push each other out and somehow keep, you know, the great life away from us because we're all so busy going after the good life. And you've heard that kind of stuff before. We also live in an information-overloaded world. We know so much that no decision is simple anymore. You know, you want to bring some nice fruit home for your family because that's a good thing to do in the wintertime, but you know those strawberries came from Chile and they're in a plastic container that is not going to get recycled and it's going to be in a landfill until approximately the year 2065 or maybe 7265, you know, who knows? I mean, it's just life has gotten so complicated and we can know so much about everything that we just can get paralyzed. We don't know what to do. We don't know where to move. We just don't know how we can handle anything more. Which makes me add that the quality of life is not only largely determined by the quality of our decisions, but I think it's equally true that the quality of our lives depends on the quantity of our indecisions. All the stuff that we just can't make our mind up, or where we cancel ourselves out by spending a little time going this way, then a little time going that way, and a little time going this way, and we just end up going nowhere. We just cancel ourselves out. We just stop everything that could be really good. You know, I think when something really is a bad thing to do, I can usually tell that. I may give into it anyway. That's another problem for another message. But I know what I'm doing. But where I really need help is sorting out all the complexities of life, between all these good possibilities. Frankly, I figure that if I can make the right decision about whether to spend my evening with my family that doesn't see enough time with me, or with my friends whom I have a tendency to neglect, or maybe just doing some chores around the house that have been waiting for me for months and months, or maybe working out, which is something I really don't get enough exercise, or taking in and supporting some local arts, which is, a really important thing for me too, or volunteering someplace, because there's some places I know I should be doing that, or maybe getting caught up from some work from my job, that always needs more attention. I figure if I can navigate that world of choices, I'm not going to have to worry too much about am I going to kill somebody or steal something or take the Lord's name in vain, because I'm going to kind of be on track with my life and I'm going to know what I'm doing. And those things aren't going to bother me too much. Now, in the Old Testament, there are 613 laws that are supposed to tell you what to do in every situation of your life. You will follow them, right? No one's had any crustaceans in the last... Okay, it doesn't work. The government has tried to do the same thing. I'm not a libertarian or anything, but the government doesn't have 613 laws. They've got tens of thousands. In fact, we have a whole kind of segment of our society that's their job is to kind of look after and figure out how to apply and keep track of all these. We call them lawyers. And that's great. We need that. I'm not arguing against that part of society, but it doesn't work. It isn't our answer. It doesn't make life easier. It hasn't made it simpler for us to have these things and to know what to do in all these complex things, especially when we're choosing among good and competing influences. And I think when we try to approach life that way, by figuring out the things that we're not supposed to do, what we're doing is making God very, very little. A mini-sized God with a very particular view and a clear stand on every situation and every question, removing all doubt, an intricate, invasive, mechanical, and rather scary God, whom it's our job to find a way around so we can do those things anyway. Now, that doesn't sound like the God that I've been getting to know. Hopefully not the God that you've been getting to know. For this series, we've been focusing on a couple of words from this letter. It's in the New Testament to the Ephesians. It's chapter 3, verses 18 and 19, and they're on your Sunday paper. They're also up on the screen here. Read these with me. May you be able to comprehend Christ's incomprehensible love in all its breadth and length, its height and depth, and so be filled with all of God's fullness. May you be able to comprehend God's Christ's incomprehensible love. And what's the order? It's breadth and length, it's height and depth. This is big. God says, it's letting us know that our God is so huge that all of our particularity and stuff like that, it all fits inside, it all belongs in there, but that isn't God. God is so vast that you stand in front of God and you're just in awe when you get a glimpse. And everything belongs into it. It's one of our biggest jobs, I think, is to avoid creating God in our own image. Avoid making a God that is simply there to tell us what to do in particular situations and particular things. That's worried about all those little details of our lives rather than how we live. I think our job is to keep God big. On this last Tuesday and Thursday with the group life, the Holy Gibberish thing that was closing up, we were talking about this, and Melissa, we were talking about this Keep God Big, and Melissa said, I think that's our next t-shirt, I think it is. Is that what we're about as a community? Is to kind of fight against this movement of making God just be the God of my agenda? As Anne Lamont said, you can always tell that you created God in your own image when your God hates all the same people you do. Isn't that what we're about? Of making God and letting God be as big as possible and always just walking into the grace, walking into the possibilities, walking into the hope that a God that big that will always surprise us, always embrace something that we didn't know could already be a part of our lives and part of our world. That's the kind of God that we're called to claim and to let other people get to know. So, who am I supposed to marry? Where am I supposed to go to college? What job should I take? It's not that those are unimportant. They're very important. But is your God big enough to handle, to be with you, to deal with any of these decisions? Or is your God, little g, so small that when you make a wrong step, you get off the path that you're now on your own? Either having to get back on track before you can be in touch with God, or you're going to have to settle with second best, and you're never going to quite be what God had expected of you because you took that left turn back there when you should have taken a right. Or another way to put it, is your God only big enough to be concerned with what you do, or is your God big enough to be concerned about who you are no matter what you do? Now, this really big God, applying this to decisions, I think is really important because it allows us to make a really, really important distinction. And because this God allows us to trade, and you'll find this on your papers, in your outline, it allows us to trade the tyranny of the perfect decision for, I'll get to that, because there is this tyranny of the perfect decision. Why do we freeze up? Why do we worry? Why do we spend so much time in regret? Because we think there was a right decision to make. And how do you make it when there's that much weight on your decision? How will you ever be able to guarantee that you chose rightly in the town you moved to, and the person you married, and the course of study you chose, and whether you should have gone out for that sport or not? There's no way to guarantee it. Further, I don't think there is such a thing as a perfect decision. So a God that is that big, a God that can embrace everything, allows us to trade off the tyranny of the perfect decision for the freedom of the next decision. You are free to make your next choice. I think, in fact, you see a little box on your outline to the side of that, and it says in that box, permission to choose again. And so above that, write the word forgiveness. Forgiveness. What is forgiveness? It's a lot of things. In fact, we're going to dive into it a lot deeper in terms of relationships in a couple of weeks as part of the series. But in terms of our decisions, forgiveness is permission to choose again. Doesn't matter what the last one was. You have permission to choose again. And God will be with you just as much on that one as the last one. That's pretty important stuff, I think, for us. Because, lack of forgiveness is a total showstopper for us. When we can't forgive ourselves and we can't allow ourselves to make that next decision, and we spend all of our time in regret over the last one or worrying about the last one. So how God wants to do this. And this is a big what if question, another kind of Jacob's well sort of question of what if. What if instead of external rules, the 10 Commandments, the 613 of the Old Testament, whatever, what if instead of external rules that tell you what to do, God gave you an internal drive to guide you? Right? In other words, God didn't put out fences and said, okay, just walk between these and you'll never get hurt. Instead, God says, I put something inside you to drive you forward. Just trust that. See where it goes. We're going to work from that. And then guess what that means? It means God really believes in your ability to live that out. Not to live it out perfectly, because it's the tyranny of the perfect decision, but God says, I'll always be with you as you make your next decision. So you remember that continuum with fun over here and God over there, and how a lot of people perceive our faith to be? I think what it really is on this side is the good life that always ends up somewhere letting us down, and it doesn't deliver what we hope it to. On the other side is this good life that God wants to show us, the one that does actually ultimately satisfy and ultimately fulfill what we're looking for in our lives. And that's what that's all about. So this drive that God puts within us to lead us forward, it has lots of names. And in the Bible, often it's referred to as your calling. The Latin vocation comes from that. The calling that you have in your life that's specific to you. It could be your purpose. It's the passion that you have for something. Here at Jacob's Well, we also often refer to it as your shape. We use that as an acronym, shaping your spiritual gifts, your heart, which is your passions, your ability, your personality, your experiences, all those things that have shaped you and made you uniquely who you are. Or another word for it is your pulse, the pulse that you have. We see this reflected in 1 Corinthians. Paul, again, the same guy who wrote the passage that we read from Ephesians, he says, now there are a variety of gifts, but they all come from the same Spirit. Each person is given this manifestation of the Holy Spirit for the common good. We all are given this. God has entrusted each one of us with this drive, this passion, this calling, this pulse in our lives. And God has it for our common good so that together we can be whole. We can all play the parts that we are called to play. Now, I'm not saying so much that you should believe that this is true because it's written in the Bible. I'm actually kind of saying the opposite. I mean, don't you know this is true? Don't you have this sense that each one of us is unique and we have our own callings, that there is something in you that you've never quite found anyone else? And that when you tie into that, I mean, that makes things click for you? Maybe you haven't quite gotten your finger on it. Maybe it shifts sometimes. That's okay. These things change in our lives as we change and as we grow and as we learn. That's all good. But don't you know that that's true? And it isn't neat to know that the Bible is telling us that God recognizes that. In fact, God not only recognizes that, God says, yeah, I nurtured that. I engendered it. I nurtured. In fact, I depend on it for you to be the person that I need you to be so this world can know the love that I want to show it. That's the kind of God that I want to be interested in. That's the kind of God that doesn't just say, I'm God and you got to do what I tell you, but I really care about you, and I need you to be you, and I'm going to try to help you to be that person. Now, talking about that drive, I used the word pulse, okay? And I got that from one of our fellow Jacob Wellers who's down in Florida right now, Nick Tassler, and a bunch of you know him. And Nick Tassler is just this amazing guy who's actually running around working with Fortune 500 companies and everything, and he did this book called Decision Pulse. This is his area of expertise. He's a social scientist and works with this kind of stuff. And he's really onto some stuff here. I've spent a lot of time working with him. He's used some with the staff. This isn't the end all. The way he's kind of worked this out isn't the only way to do it, but it makes a lot of sense. And well, I'm sure his Fortune 500 companies, or Nick would rather his Fortune 500 companies wouldn't hear me say this, I think his faith has informed a lot and to help him understand how all this goes together. To me, what he's talking about makes so much sense with what we learn about in our faith in God. In fact, his website there is at the bottom, decisionpulse.com/assessment. If you just go to decisionpulse.com, you can take this assessment. And what it does is it comes up, it deals with 8 what they call personal directions, universal personal directions. Social scientists over the last 100 years or so have been studying people in every culture around the world, and one way they boil it down, and they said there are 8 basic personal directions. Everybody has one as their major direction, and they are authority, security, humanity, relationships, achievement, power, stimulation, freedom. Now, those names don't mean a whole lot to you right now, and we don't have time to have you all take it, but I hope you do go there and take it this week sometime and take a look at it and go through some of the materials there. And, but the idea there with his Decision Pulse is that all of us have one key area that is more important to us than any of the others. And that is the pulse, that is the drive that should be guiding our lives. It doesn't mean the other 7 aren't important. We all value many of them, and some of them are right up there kind of even competing with it. And that's okay, that's how it is. I mean, my personal Decision Pulse, according to his thing, I've taken the assessment 3 times and actually kind of tried to skew it because I didn't want to keep pigeonholing myself, and I couldn't. It comes up with the exact same thing every time. I'm humanity. Surprise, surprise, I'm a pastor. And I have other ones that are right up there with it, and some of them sort of surprise me. But the idea is, of course, there are other things. I mean, not everything that I do has to do with humanity. I think the important thing is that you realize, as I follow some of these things, and sometimes I have to do something that has more to do with security, or I am working with relationships and so on, that's fine. I spend time in those other areas, but they can't contradict this basic thing, and that is, I want to make this world a better place for people. All right? So how can I use my desire for achievement to allow that to happen? As a pastor, one of the things that I do is spend a lot of time creating teams and getting teams working on stuff like that, which means a lot of administrative stuff. It isn't quite like helping a homeless person find a place to stay. It isn't like bringing global economic justice to anyone. But I do it because it helps me make a community like you guys, where you are all about making this world more like God wants it to be. So that does drive my #1 goal. So you begin to see how these things don't contradict, but they tie in. And it's also true that while we have one, a most important thing in our lives, some decisions that we make just don't have anything to do with it. I mean, it's kind of like here at Jacob's Well. I think we all have a ministry where we are called because of our shape, our passion. We're called to minister here, but then there's just sort of stuff you got to do. As I've often said, I've never met anybody with the calling to wash dishes, or to load and unload the trailer on Sunday mornings, so we all pitch in and we just do our part. There's the things that you're called to do, you're shaped to do, there's the things you just got to do. But do they contribute to, do they not contradict what's really important about for you? So, this list that he comes up with here isn't so important. It's one list. I think it makes sense. I think it's really helpful. There's other ways of breaking it up and to looking at it and understanding it. Maybe use some of them at work and so on. That's fine. The important thing is, what is your pulse? What is the driving force? What is the thing that God uniquely created you and said, I gave you all these experiences. I gave you this personality. I helped you, engender and nurture you in all these different things so that you could do what in the world? What, along with all the other stuff, but what is the basic thing to do? Name it. Claim it. Put it to work. Let it drive your decisions and become who it is that you're supposed to be. So I guess that you say, well, that sounds nice, Greg, but then, how do you actually use that? How do you do that? And thanks to Nick, he, I think, gives us a lot of clarity. And I think it works really, really well with this. So making the next decision, right? Because it isn't the tyranny of the perfect decision, it's freedom to make the next decision. And he says it's pretty simple. There's just 3 steps to your decisions, and you'll find these on your paper as well. The first one is check your pulse. Before I face a decision, think, well, what is most important in my life? Where do I really want to go? It's about humanity. It's about making a difference in the world. It's about improving the world I'm in so it's better than it was yesterday. Okay, so how does it fit with that? When you do that, when you check your pulse, you reduce this vast array of choices to a much more manageable group of choices, the things that actually make sense with that. Then he says the second one is consult your anti-you. Consult your anti-you. In other words, we have a tendency to be kind of blinded by what we're wanting to do. I might have all kinds of unhealthy or unhelpful biases that are just kind of built into me that make me hard to see through the decision. Or it could just be my enthusiasm or my determination. Gee, I have this idea. I want to make it work no matter what. And it really isn't consistent with who I am. There might be all kinds of problems in it that I'm just blinding myself to. So consult your anti-you. Your anti-you is someone who tends to see things differently than you. I always think, your kids, your spouse, partner, your boss, people that automatically disagree with you on anything, they're good people to talk to. But actually with practice, you can serve this role yourself pretty well. You can learn how to be your own anti-self and to check these things. So you check your pulse, you consult your anti-you, and then the third thing is just decide. Just decide. You've eliminated anything that's contrary to what's really important in your life. You dealt with all the really big risks by consulting the anti-you, all right? So this is just a next decision. What do you have to lose but to decide, except the time to actually implement the decision or to learn from it so you can fix it and do a better one next time? It can be that simple. And it's important then to remember that mistakes are a good thing. Mistakes are a good thing if you're learning because of them, all right? Get rid of the tyranny of the perfect decision and embrace the freedom of making the next decision. So it isn't about not making mistakes. We spend way too much time worrying about that. One thing we did as a staff, this is back in the day when we still had a paper dictionary, but we went in and we cut out the word failure in the dictionary and we pasted in the word fascinating over it. We say, there's no failure. There's just fascinating experiences. Because, that's how you learn, especially in a world that is changing as much as our world is, and no one really knows how to do it and how to navigate these difficult seas that we're all sailing in right now. We're going to make a lot of mistakes. We need to try a lot of things that aren't going to work. We need to have a lot of fascinating experiences. So isn't that unusual for someone to come to a staff meeting and say, well, I had a fascinating experience this last week. We all look at them and say, how fascinating, So, you learn from these things and you move on and you make a better decision next time. It's not about right decisions, it's about next decisions. Now, some of you Bible scholars here might catch me and say, well, hold it. Just remember, John chapter 8, there's a story about Jesus and the woman who was caught in adultery. Some of you don't know it. Go back and read it, John chapter 8. So this woman is caught in adultery, gets dragged in front of Jesus, and they're going to stone her. They're going to kill her. And he said, Jesus, what should we do? And he looks around and says, well, who here is without sin? Go ahead and throw the first stone. And gradually, one by one, they all drop their stones and walk away. And then I love it. He talks to this woman and says, well, hold it. This is where you're going to catch me. Isn't what Jesus ultimately says to her, go and sin no more? He does. That's how it ends. Go and sin no more. Doesn't that mean don't make more mistakes? No, I don't think so. I think this is what he's saying to her. He's saying, look, you almost got killed here. I think you need to learn from this, okay? All right? Now go and don't screw up like that again, all right? But he said, go. And if you have the words before that, before he says that, everyone else is gone. It's just the two of them, and he says, is there anyone left to judge you? She looks around, says, nope, no one's left. And Jesus looks at her and says, neither do I judge you. Go, sin no more. Go, learn from this. You just about got yourself killed. And go live. Make your next decision. Follow me. Forgiveness is permission to make the next decision. Now, we all need something to guide us, and it isn't going to come from beyond us. It's already inside us. Sometimes it shifts and changes. That's okay. That means that you're growing, you're living, you're learning. Things change. That's okay. And we have to change along with it. But here's the deal. Follow what you feel is calling you forward every day. Follow it courageously. Also follow it humbly. You will make mistakes. That's okay. God is big enough to not only deal with and forgive them, but to use them. That's what resurrection is all about. God saying that there is no situation, no dead end, no mistake, no blocked path that is so great that God can't have the last word in that. And God's last word is always the same. It's life. I have one of my very favorite Bible verses. We talked about this in group life this week too, so some of you know this already, but it comes from the longest psalm in the Bible, Psalm 119. It's verse 105, and it says, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Now, many of you know I was in Papua New Guinea for about 7 years altogether, and I spent a lot of time. We were in a really remote area, roadless area, just up in the mountains, a tropical rainforest, and I worked with supporting local church workers and just doing what they had to do. And we spent a lot of time traveling from village to village over these mountains, and it was often, like 12-hour walks over the mountains from one village area to another. And they often would like to walk at night because they hunted, in English, marsupials, possums, just lots and lots of those there, and with bow and arrow. So they would rather walk at night. Good enough. And I had no choice. I would be lost without them. So, and they would, as we walked through the rainforest, they would carry a kerosene lantern. I mean, that's all they had. There was, there's the Coleman, like pressure lanterns you can pump up like that. No, didn't have those. The lanterns would break. They're expensive. They use way too much kerosene. Not going to happen. Flashlights. No, and this is on the bush. You can't buy batteries. And again, it's expensive, and they would never last all night long. Anyway, so the little kerosene lamp. Did you ever try to walk in the rainforest, especially in a line of people with one person carrying a kerosene lamp? You know how much you can see? Enough to take one step. That's it. One step at a time. That's all you get. Now, when they wrote this psalm, God, your word is a lamp to my feet, a light to the path. This is their vision of what it's about. It isn't walking in the room and flipping on the switch and seeing everything. No. God says, it's not going to work that way. Now, I could tell you why I think it doesn't work that way, but that's another message another week, and you'll hear that one too sometime. You probably already have, but you'll get it again. But God says, I need you to stay close. You can't do this your own. And you don't have to make the ultimate decision. You don't have to see the end of the room. You just need to make the next step. Make that with me. So take those next steps. Check your pulse, check your anti-you, then just choose and repeat. Bring life. Be forgiven. Learn. Forgive others. Learn again. Become better and better at being you, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Lots and lots of mistakes. Being you isn't easy, and it is never done. And you have permission to try to be you. Okay? May it be so. Let's pray. God, thanks for calling us. Thanks for putting something inside of us and allowing us to struggle and trying to figure it out. It can be so confusing, but we know when we do get a hold of it that it seems to open the world. We thank you for believing in that and to working through that and to calling us forward into the world and helping put the world together through who each and every one of us is. Help us not just to conform to all the expectations that the world has around us, but to seek that which is truly us, each and every one of us. And thank you for letting us know that it's okay to make mistakes and trying to be that person and leading us forward every step of the way anyway. In your name, amen.